Hi, I'm Mary Elizabeth Williams, and this is Patient. The gentleman sitting with me today is Rob Tannenbaum. Rob is a journalist. He is the co-author of I Want My MTV. He's written for the New York Times, GQ, Rolling Stone, Playboy. You get the picture. He's also one of the goofiest people I've ever known in my entire life, and I've known him for 30 years now, Rob. Is that right?
Should we tell the folks at home what we were just discussing?
No.
Should, should I tell them that you managed to work the word chafing into a lascivious conversation?
It wasn't lascivious. I would call it educational conversation about health
That's one way to look at it.
for people of our age.
Sure, I'll go with that.
Let's put it that way. Yeah, I like how journalist Rob has already got me in the hot seat. You've turned the tables in the first 30 seconds. Good for that's what makes you a pro, Rob. You've already turned the tables and made this your interview. I'm gonna try and take control of the narrative now. We'll see how it
Okay.
goes. Rob, what was a healthcare experience that radicalized you?
Ooh, it's funny that your podcast is called Patient because I am not a patient. I'm not a patient person. I'm often a patient, but not a patient person. Around 2012, 2013, I had frequent core pain, and it moved around. So the core is defined as everything between your knees and your nipples. It's a pretty big area. And orthopedists will tell you that it's difficult to diagnose things in the core because the pain refers. You might have a bad hip and never feel even a second of pain in your hip. So my physician referred me to one specialist who referred me to another, who referred me to another. This went on for 2 years. I had, let's see, at least three different diagnoses. I had a steroid injection into my pubic bone, 55 sessions of physical therapy, 100 sessions of Pilates, gyrotonics. I can't even remember what that was. It's a form of exercise, and yeah, it's kind of like Pilates, but there's a specific set of props that you use. So I think probably the eighth orthopedist I saw said, well, you're kind of a medical mystery. And as you know, if there's something in this world you don't want to be, it's a medical mystery. Eventually, this went on now for 2 years, 2 years of being in constant pain. Now, the pain was mostly, on the pain scale of 0 to 10, it was mostly a 2 or a 3. But there were times when it got to an 8. And the worst symptom was in my right adductor, my right thigh. When I was running, if I stopped short, it felt like someone stabbed me in the thigh. It was an 8 on the pain scale. That would last for about 30 seconds, and then it would drop to a 5, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, it was gone completely. So along this path of 2 years and seeing 10 specialists, someone had mentioned the name William Myers to me. And I went to Philadelphia, where Dr. Myers is located, and he did an MRI and told me that he knew what I had, which was a great relief. He said what I had was a core muscle injury, and he recommended core muscle repair surgery. Quick sidebar about Dr. Myers, which you can take out if you think listeners and viewers won't find it interesting. He's an amazing person. Myers was a transplant surgeon at Duke. Before that, he was the star goalie on the Harvard men's soccer team and was offered a professional contract in Brazil, which he turned down to go to medical school and then become a transplant surgeon. While he was at Duke, the soccer coach came to him. And Dr. Myers had nothing to do with the soccer team, but the soccer coach was desperate because he had a bunch of players who had core injuries that were so severe that their soccer careers were over. And so the soccer coach said, just have a look at them and see if there's anything you can do. And Myers started examining the soccer players, and he developed a theory. He invented a surgery. He invented a surgery that only he does. There are other people in the world who perform the surgery, but you want to see the guy who invented the surgery. And at the time I had the surgery, 2015, he was the only one.
Wow.
So there's this procedure that I need to have done. And I go to my wonderful health insurance company, United Healthcare Oxford. And I want to get this surgery pre-approved because he's out of network. Oxford turns me down. And the amount of money that they would have had to pay was $1,500. Turned it down. They claimed that the surgery had not been shown to be effective in long-term controlled medical studies. So I did the first level of appeal in New York is an internal appeal to the people who've already turned you down. And guess what? Surprise, surprise. They upheld their initial verdict. This is probably the point where most people give up in the story.
But that's not you.
You know, I'm a bad person to fuck with. I'm not tough. I'm not mean. I don't beat people up. I don't threaten people. I'm just not going to put up with this bullshit. So I determined that I was going to force them to pay. One of the things I noticed, and you probably know this, on the internal review, the doctor who does the internal review is supposed to have the same or a similar specialty as the provider that you want to see. And in this case, the decision was signed by a guy who was the former president of the National Capital Society of Plastic Surgeons, who had been in the news a few years earlier because he objected to a law. He objected to a law that was going to inform women of potential healthcare problems associated with breast implants. So my core surgery was reviewed by a plastic surgeon. And I think this gave me a little bit of a leg up. In New York State, after you've exhausted your one internal appeal, you can do an external appeal to the Department of Financial Services, which is what I did. I got several of my doctors to write letters. I got documentation of what the procedure was and how it worked. I was able to document some of the people it had helped. So the number of athletic careers that Dr. Myers has saved is astounding. And a lot of it is private, right? There's medical confidentiality, so he doesn't really talk about it. But when I had the surgery, the day you're supposed to stay in Philadelphia for 3 days and start doing physical therapy there. The first day that I went to physical therapy after my surgery, there was Robinson Cano doing physical therapy right next to me. 5, 6-time All-Star for the New York Yankees. The day after, when I went back to do my PT, was Marshawn Lynch, running back for the Seattle Seahawks. So there's a long, long history of Myers performing this surgery successfully, which I was able to document here. Now look at this baby. That is a thick package. Don't make the joke.
There's a Taylor Swift song about that.
And, and in fact, when I won, to jump ahead for a second, when I won the external appeal, the person who wrote what I think of as my victory letter just like managed to mention how extensive a package I had submitted. I took that to be a little bit snarky. But on appeal, literally what they said was what the New York State Department of Financial Services said was, everything Oxford has concluded about this surgery is incorrect. It is proven. And from having turned down, right, they were going to pay $1,500. Instead, they had to pay $26,000. Now, let's think about this math for a second. 16, they paid 16 or 17 times as much. All of their decisions, I believe, are predicated on an algorithm to generate the maximum profit available. So this algorithm has to say, now in my case, the discrepancy between the insurance fee and what they were going to pay on the back end was extreme. But let's say that typically it's 10. That means that 9 times out of 10, people just don't bother to appeal. This is what they're counting on. They're counting on the fact that you're busy, you're distracted, you're defeated, you don't have the time, you don't have the energy. You might be so sick that you literally can't do it. But what I found is if you do persist and you do have the time and the energy and the, just raw, viciously angry determination that I brought to this whole project, you can win. And I ended up writing an article about Dr. Myers. In the years following that article, a number of people have contacted me on Facebook or Twitter and said, hey, I'm having the same problem with my insurance company. Do you think you could help me?
Wow.
So I've been able to help, explain to people what I did and what they might be able to do in similar circumstances.
Right,
And
because
that's
you,
what radicalized me.
yeah, and you're now out there radicalizing others. I think what you're saying is so, so important because they are counting on us not fighting back. Like it's absolutely a strategy, like it's a tactic. It's not like they really believe this isn't an unnecessary procedure. They're
Right.
doing this because they're counting on you not being motivated or not being able to do what you did, Rob, because they didn't realize that they were fucking with someone who is like a dog with a bone on this kind of stuff. Right? Like,
I think of myself as an easygoing person.
aw.
Maybe friends like you don't think of me as an easygoing
It
person, but
wouldn't be the top word I'd use to describe.
I was not going to let this go, certainly.
No.
Do you remember, was it about 20 years ago, there was all this talk about death panels,
Oh
right?
yeah.
If the government controls healthcare, there will be death panels. Well, guess what? There already are death panels. The difference is, do you want your death panel to consist of people who work for the government and are not obsessed with profit, or people who work for a private corporation that has to show quarterly profits so that the stock price will continue to increase? And I can feel the bile rising up from my toes. What I don't understand about this, everybody hates their healthcare. Everybody hates their medical insurance company. But nobody seems to make a connection between shitty healthcare and capitalism. That's what this is. This is late capitalism determining who lives and who dies. And the fact that no one has fixed this system is astounding to me. It will not happen until people wake up to the idea that for-profit medical care is always going to fuck them over
And the fact that
because they're paying. Yeah,
no, this is the fact that other countries don't do this. That it is
yeah,
other countries with very high functioning economies with, with really countries that know what they're doing, countries that know their shit don't do this. And we in the US
yeah,
repeatedly just say, nope, we don't want that. No, please. Oh, something that might actually not be private healthcare that's going to go away
yeah.
if I lose my job, that's going to go away if I age out of something, if I have certain kind of pre-existing conditions. No, I don't want something that might I don't want to be treated as a patient and to be guaranteed that I'll be treated and be guaranteed that I won't go broke. And I want to make sure that I have a system where, see, now you got me on it, where like if I'm injured or I get sick, I'm going to go into my healthcare situation not knowing how much I'm going to pay. Like I want to
Right,
not, like just, you know what, don't tell me. Let it be a surprise.
right. Or order food without knowing what the hamburger is going to cost. And then $380 for a hamburger? Could you have mentioned that?
Right?
But I believe that there are laws now about publicly available pricing in certain establishments. shouldn't that apply to healthcare as well?
Right.
You know,
And
you
should,
you hear
no, please.
you hear stories. People will say, "Oh, my friend in Canada needed a surgery and couldn't get it because of the government." My friend in England had a problem with the NHS. There was a 4-month waiting list to get the surgery. Well, I'm sure that often ends in tragedy, and I'm not dismissing that.
Yeah.
But it, it why do you not recognize that is already happening here? And although it happens in Canada and England, it happens much less.
Right. Because, and we know that because we know what the maternal mortality rates are. We know what the neonatal mortality rates are. We know what the gun violence rates are. We know what the suicide rates are. We know what the rates of heart disease, cancer, like all of those things. We can quantify it.
Yeah.
So their healthcare can't be worse if they're having better health outcomes.
But people don't think that way. And the
No,
question is why?
that is the
If
big,
you,
that's what this show is all about. Why? Every single person, and this has not been intentional, but every single person I've had on has had a healthcare and has had a health insurance story. It's the
yeah,
first thing everybody wants to talk about because
it's universal.
yeah, because we've all been fucked by our health insurance companies, and it affects everything to do with what happens when we get sick, when we get injured, when, like you, we have that mysterious thing that the doctors can't figure out. And we have to be put into a system where if the doctors don't have an answer, it just gets punted back to us and the
Yeah.
expense gets punted back to us.
I'm not a Bernie bro by any means, but I think of this slightly in Bernie Sanders terms. You know, in America, there used to be this middle ground politically. And here was the left. I'll do it for the viewer. Here's the left, here's the right. And then there's stuff in the middle. Well, in the last few years, the right has gone out here. I'm now off screen. That's how far right it's gone. The left hasn't really moved. You know, people who are Republicans can talk all they want about loony liberals, hasn't moved that much. There is no comparable equivalent on the left to what's happening on the right. Because if there were, we would be having a genuine conversation about the pros and cons of capitalism.
Right. And as you
And
say,
we,
and you had this experience during the Obama administration.
yeah,
You're talking about something that
well,
happened to you, right? Like 10 years ago. Look where we are now. Like,
I have my own issues with Obamacare.
sure,
Um,
sure, sure.
I don't, I'm not overall. I don't know what it has done for people in America. I think more good than harm. But there are it was hasty, right? So there are certain people who got left out, and my wife and I are among them because we're both self-employed. All we can do is go to the marketplace, and there's nothing on the marketplace.
Yeah.
So there's no competition. So our premiums, I think we literally have a $20,000 out of network premium this year. It might be higher than that.
Right. So it's just, you're just paying for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rob, I want to ask you one more thing. For those who aren't tenacious journalists who I think probably get a little excited when they get a fight like this. I mean, as you said, just like you were running on pure fury at a certain point.
Yeah.
We all have this fight at some point in our lives. We all have to do this. And it absolutely is devastatingly demoralizing, confusing intentionally. When those people come to you and they say, I'm having this problem too, what do you tell them?
All I can do is tell them how I did it. And I'm sure that there are people who do the exact same thing and don't win. You know, there were good circumstances on my side. I was right, and the insurance company was wrong. The patient isn't always right. The doctor isn't always right. So all I can do is say to people, look, here's how I did it. But there's the inhibition about questioning doctors. There's the late capitalist feeling of not having agency in the world, right? I mean, this is what American society is overwhelmed with right now, the feeling of a lack of agency. There's nothing I can do. We've turned into a shruggy nation. And so people just give up or they don't have the wherewithal. You know, because the insurance company would not approve the surgery, I had to pay out of pocket. And I don't remember what it was, 12,000, 14,000, something like that. And when I won the external appeal, Dr. Myers refunded my money, right? So I had gone out of pocket because I needed this surgery. Journalists don't exactly get rich, Mary Beth, with the exception of you. So this was not.
I don't want to brag, but I recently made $350 on a freelance assignment. Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say for a book.
Oh, ask me offline what I got paid for the for that Amazon show.
How much?
I'll tell you when the camera's off.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I will tell you it was in the mid three figures.
Whoa. So I could afford to pay for my own surgery. It wasn't pleasant. And, I was damn well going to do my best to get that money back. But I was able to pay for it and not go bankrupt.
Right.
I know that of the millions of people who are facing this exact same situation, many of them are not as lucky as I was.
It's the
And there,
number one reason for bankruptcy in the United States.
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised. I had thought, when I got the letter of determination from New York State, I strutted around for a couple of days. I was pretty full of myself, and I decided that I was going to start a business where I helped people fight back against their insurance company. But then I got an assignment from the New York Times. But
You were like, you know what? But first I have to interview Justin Timberlake, and then I'll and then I'll save the American healthcare system. You know what? That's fair. That's completely fair. I would have
it
done this.
wasn't even Justin Timberlake.
Oh no. I'm sure it was someone great. I'm sure it was someone. Was it John Mayer?
No, no, that happened.
And
But
that was
thank you for
Playboy.
bringing that up.
I will never for that was I will it's a classic. I'm going to put it in the show notes because it's I hope I because everyone should read that interview. It's one of the quintessential interviews. It's your Frank Sinatra has a cold. Let's just put it that way.
So who's going to fix this? How is this going to get solved?
I don't
When
fucking
and
know.
how are
I
yeah,
don't fucking know. That's the problem. I don't know what we're supposed to do, Rob. And I'm scared for our kids.
yeah.
I'm scared for our kids.
All it would take is one person telling the truth with a large platform. I mean, somebody has to go out on a limb. No, I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to make that joke. Somebody has to go out on a limb, take a chance, speak the truth. And, if you did this as part of a political campaign, right, there are people who are effectively single issue political candidates. I would vote for somebody who said, the problem is health insurance companies, send me to the House of Representatives and I will get this fixed.
Yeah. I mean, abortion is what determined the 2016 election. That's what they did.
Mhm.
They mobilized issue voters. And I think you're right. If we can get people to just be single issue, like fix this, because we all get sick. We all have to deal with this bullshit. And most of us have been fucked over by it. And the fact that we are somehow content with that is unacceptable. And it's unsustainable. That's the thing. It's unsustainable.
Right now, are you angry on my behalf or angry on your own behalf?
I'm angry on everyone's behalf. I'm angry at shit I've had to put up with, what my kids have had
Yeah,
to put up with, what you've had to put up with, and the fact that like every person I talk to, every person
yeah.
has a version of this story. And you're lucky because you had a good doctor, because sometimes the story is also, and I had a shit doctor who made me feel like garbage in the midst of all of this. It's it's just insane and it's unsustainable. But I don't want to end on the like us pissed off at the world note. I think we can do this, right? Maybe our kids
Here,
can.
here's what just popped into my mind. And I'm now going to argue against, I think I'm arguing against what you and I very strongly believe. Is there an argument that you, Mary Beth, are alive because of for profit healthcare?
Yes. No,
You survived cancer by getting into a medical trial.
I'm
Would
gonna
that medical,
I'm gonna say worse than that. I am alive because of big pharma. That's why I am alive. I am alive because I got in a clinical trial run by BMS, and I did not have to pay for it because I was a subject.
yeah,
So, no. But for everyone who wants to also blow smoke up the ass of big pharma, that's an argument that can be made too. But in other ways, we're all alive because of private healthcare, because what else do we have? Like anytime we've ever gone to the doctor and not died, it was private healthcare. But it's still it's still a broken system and it still shouldn't be this unjust, right? But you're still here.
I,
10 years later, you're still here.
I
You put
don't
you
think
put on a blazer for me. Thank
I
you.
did. I don't think the American political system is built to solve massive problems. Why is there not a problem to climate change? Sorry, why is there not a solution to climate change? First of all, people don't agree that there is climate change.
Right.
Just, maybe that's the same thing as people not agreeing that the healthcare system is broken.
Yeah, why do we pay
Maybe
two
you
hundred
have,
why do we pay $200,000 and get ourselves into a lifetime of debt to get a college degree? Like the American
you know,
capitalist system is not built to help us. Oh my God, we sound like such radicals. But we are still both alive, which is kind of
I
cool.
will I will campaign manage for free your bid for the U.S. House of Representatives as Inwood's representative.
Don't tempt me with a good time, Rob, because I'll do it. And also don't give me a dare, because I've never been a dare I didn't take, which is how I've
I
wound up in
look
very
where it got you.
so I've wound up in a lot of those stupider situations in my life. My friend, I love you. I'm so glad that you are here. I'm so glad you fought the law and you won with
Yeah,
that dossier behind you that matches my shirt. I like that we coordinated that today. I love you, sir, and I'm just so grateful to you for telling your story and for just being the friend you've been to me for the last 30 years. You're awesome.
I love you too, and I'm glad you didn't die.
Thank you. I am too. And I'm glad you didn't die either. All right, my pal. I love you. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.